This Torah class is brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.
Okay, good afternoon, Rabbi. Welcome everyone to today's Devorah. Today we begin Perek Gimel. Perek Gimel, Hechyagel Hadam Atzma B'midas HaChochma. How can a person train themselves in the midah of Chochma? Perek Beis spoke about the first Sefira, which is Kaser, the highest Sefira, and now we go down to the Sefira below Kaser, which is the Sefira of Chochma. And how does a person acquire the Sefira of Chochma? The three highest Sfiros are Chochma, Bina, and Das. Another name for Das is Kaser. So now we do Chochma. Heich Yagel Adam Atzma B'midas HaChochma. Hinei HaChochma Ha'elyoina Prusa Al Kol HaNimtzam Kulam. The supernal wisdom, that means the wisdom of God, is spread on all of creation. Meaning it is recognizable in all of creation, the wisdom of Hashem. Even in the lowest objects, even in animal life. One can study animal life and be amazed for all eternity of the profundity of wisdom that is laden in it. One could study plant life. One could study single-cell organism. And the wisdom of the Creator is apparent to the extent that one will constantly find deeper and deeper wisdom. Although it's hidden and very exalted, in other words, it's not blatant, but upon investigation it is there. And about that we say, Marabu Masecha Hashem, how great. Actually, the Devorah translated it earlier in Perek Beis, Marabu, how chashuv are your actions, God. Kulam b'chachma asisa. Your wisdom is apparent everywhere. Everything Hashem made, He made with wisdom. So one thing that we recognize in all of creation is the wisdom of Hashem. Okay, so kach roy la'adam shetia chachmasai mitzuya b'koil. Likewise, it is appropriate for a person that one's wisdom should be found everywhere. Meaning one should spread their wisdom to whoever is willing to accept it. You should teach to benefit man, each individual, according to your ability. If someone has the ability to teach many, they should teach many. If someone has the ability to teach some, they should teach some. If someone has the ability to teach their family, so teach your family, teach your children, teach your spouse, teach your siblings. If you only have ability to teach one person, teach that person. And if that person is yourself, teach yourself. But one should try to proliferate wisdom to the extent as possible. Just like the Ribbon Shalom, just like God's wisdom is apparent in everything, one should spread their wisdom as far as he can. Kol ma sheyuchal lahashpia alav mechachmasai yashpiyehu. Whatever you could influence others with your wisdom, you should do so. Nothing should interfere with that pursuit. Now, we're going to learn something quite amazing. We mentioned the Sefira of Keser is always looking downward. First of all, it's embarrassed to look at the Ribbon Shalom, and it's focused downward to be mative. But now we're going to see that Chochma, which is the Sefira below Keser, has two aspects to it. In Hebrew, in Kabbalistic Hebrew, the word aspect is translated as pen or pun. V'hinei el ha'chachma shnei fanim. Wisdom has two aspects. Hapun ha'elyon, the upper aspect, and the lower aspect. Now the upper aspect is closer to Keser. The lower aspect is further from Keser. So the upper aspect, hapun el ha'keser, that is facing Keser, that aspect does not focus below. It merely receives from above. So the higher aspect of Chochma is facing up at Keser. Keser is looking down. The upper aspect of Chochma is looking up to be Makabel from Keser. Hapan Hasheni, the second aspect of Chochma, Hatachtain, the lower one, Poina Lamata, faces below, Lahashgiach Basfiros, to oversee the lower spheroids, namely Bina, Chesed, Gevura, Tiferes, Hoid, Netzach, Yesod, Malchus. So the lower aspect of Chochma is facing downward. To oversee the Sefira, Shehi Mispashetes B'Chachmas Aleim. The Chochma spreads forth and infuses all the Sefiros with Chochma. So the upper Chochma accepts from Keser. The lower Chochma looks down to be mashpia on all the other Sefiros. So too, a person's Chochma needs to have two dimensions. Now this is a very important idea, almost to everyone. And that is, when we talk about the Midah of Chochma, which we must all have, the Midah of Chochma has two aspects to it. There are maybe some people who, they are great teachers and proliferators of Torah. However, sometimes you run dry. If somebody merely teaches and does not learn themselves, so they're going to be limited in their upper aspect of Chochma. Meaning there are two dimensions of Chochma. You need to sit in solitude and learn for yourself. That's the upper dimension of Chochma. And then you need to spend time relaying it and delivering it to others. Now again, this is not only to people who are Rabbeim or teachers or Rabbanim or Rosh Yeshiva. Again, everybody based on their situation has individuals in their life that they could be mashpia to. So sometimes a person could get carried away with their teaching and hashpah and forget about the acquisition of their own wisdom, where their whole learning becomes, oh, I'm learning just to give it over, but I don't have my own inherent pursuit of wisdom. I'm not learning any deeper than I need to give over. And that the Talmud Devorah says is wrong. On the other hand, if somebody only learns themselves and does not use what they learn to be able to give over to others in their capacity, that's also deficient. So the same way the Sefira of Keser has two dimensions, Kach Yeh Adam Shnei Panim. A person should have two dimensions. Hapan Harishain, the first dimension, who his Baidedusai Bekainai, is the contemplation and the solitude with his Creator, Kedei Lahaisif B'Chachmasai, to increase his wisdom, Ulasakna, and to correct it. Now, for those who have an inclination towards Chasidus, when they see the word Hisbaidedus or Hitbodedut, they get very excited. Oh, this is what Rav Nachman recommended, that one should go into solitude and just, so to speak, commune with God. However, Rav Goldberg, B'derech the Olam HaYeshivos, he interprets Hisbaidedus refers to personal study. Meaning, let's say someone's a Magid Shiur. Let's say you give a Shiur. So I'm going to prepare the Gemara to add, not to the extent that my mind is able to grasp. In other words, if a person gives a shiur, the danger is, I'm only going to learn deep enough to give it over to the Talmidim, but I'm not going to push myself. Maybe I personally have a higher capacity. I don't mean me, I mean maybe the Magid Shiur has a higher capacity, and he's not going to push himself to exert his intellectual acumen to understand it according to his level. And Rav Goldberg cites the writings of his Zayda, Rav Yitzchak Blach, in the Shir Das, that it is the midah of a chacham, that, so to speak, when he's learning something, he's not thinking, how am I going to say this over, how am I going to get away with this in the Shir, how am I going to get away with this in the class? No, when you learn yourself, you so to speak are supposed to, and this is a challenge, put aside your responsibility to your Talmidim, and you need to be listening to your own intellect and your own mind to fully experience and fulfill your personal obligation of the upper realm of wisdom, which is your contemplation and solitude to increase your own wisdom. But then there's another aspect. Don't suffice, I'm just going to sit in my 4 cubits and learn for myself. Hasheni lelamed b'nei adam, to teach people me'oisa hachachma shekadosh baruch hu shbi'ala, from that wisdom that Hashem bestowed upon you. Meaning it's not enough to learn, one should relay it to whoever is in their circle. Just like the sphere of wisdom influences each manifestation of God's divinity according to its shiur and need, meaning Chochma infuses all the Sefiros with wisdom. Kein yashpia b'chol adam. Likewise, one should be careful to bestow, k'fi shir sichlei, according to one's intellect, asher yuchal se'es, what he can bear, v'hanei ois elav, and what's appropriate for him, v'tzarka, and what he needs. Meaning, just like the Sefira of Chochma bestows wisdom to each Sefira in accordance with what each Sefira needs. Meaning, Bina may need this degree of Chochma, Yesoid may need that degree of Chochma, Chesed may need a different degree of Chochma. And Chochma is careful not to just shower each Sefira with unlimited Chochma, but it's very careful and it's very discerning in how much wisdom it dishes out based on what each Sefira needs. So too, the teacher should be aware of the needs of the student and give over to the student in accordance with what the student needs and is capable of understanding. One should be careful from giving more than the measurement of the intellect of who you're influencing. You don't want to cause harm, because if you sort of pour more than can be handled, it could actually harm the student. So just like God's Sefira of Chochma pours with in accordance with what each Sefira needs, Shekena Sefira al Yoina, because the upper Sefira Eina Moisefes al Ashir HaMugbal B'Makabel, does not add on the limitations of the ability of the recipient. So basically, the point is, one should emulate the midah of Chochma, and the midah of Chochma has two aspects, which is, the first aspect is looking up toward Keser, and the second aspect is looking down toward the other Sefiros. Likewise, one needs to have, so to speak, two objectives. One, their own personal pursuit of wisdom, and then, separate from that, in other words, you don't just acquire wisdom to give it over, you acquire wisdom for yourself. And besides that, to be able to share to the extent that the Rebbeinu Shalom allows us. Okay, Rabbi Sai, thank you everyone for joining. And Be'ezus Hashem, we will continue in Parag Gimel on Monday. Wishing everyone an amazing Shabbos. Shkoyach.
Rabbi, you got a minute for a quick question?
Yes.
Last week we learned that we're supposed to write Zio notes.
You've just experienced another Torah class brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.